it's kind of a religion for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people say, like, even the POWs, oh, you're the gal that likes to tell the POW stories. They don't remember my name, but they remember that part about me,
Mm-hmm.
which gives me credibility with them.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing just for, I mean, dealing with anybody, giving someone a chance to tell their story is a powerful thing. I mean, you've mentioned it, and particularly, I can imagine, as you get older, it gets more, whatever you're going to say, you better say it because you start realizing you've only got so much time left. And that's been something that I've been recently thinking more about, how much am I doing that is about me as opposed to, and it seems like both are taken care of. If you take care of, your family, your friends, the people you want to serve, then you tend to be taken care of, it seems. And so the a lot of my concern in life has been, well, how do I do this? How do I get better at that? Or how do I have more of what I want? And just that notion of if you give somebody the chance to express themselves or do something meaningful for themselves or just to share their story, that's a really powerful way to connect with someone. When you connect
Mm.
with someone like that, I don't know, that's part of what I guess I'm trying to borrow from you. You've connected with a lot of people this way, and I'm hoping to connect with you and borrow some of that.
Oh, gladly. And I also think the speakers groups, a lot of us, especially those of us who want to be professional speakers and speak
Mhm.
to large groups and make a difference in their life. I think we want to help the world. It sounds ridiculous. I want to change the world, but
Right.
it's sort of that idea. I realize it's on a smaller scale, but they say the butterfly wing can change the world, right? So if I'm the butterfly, wow, one speech and I change one person, well, that's one person who's going to tell another person. And
Yeah.
I think I found my tribe. I live in a very a very conservative state, which
Mhm.
I don't agree with. I've ran for public office several times and not been elected because I have a D behind me.
Right.
And I just I don't fit in. I have a vision and I'm way too creative.
Mhm.
I said, well, we should do this, and it's like people look at me like, are you crazy? Yeah, probably. But we should do that, and I believe in the earth. I believe I grow food. I mean, all those things that make me just a little bit different. Like now all these people want to know how, we've been gardening for 40 years.
Mhm.
And it's just funny how I've come to that place in myself where I'm perfect. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good with where I am because I used to be kind of uncomfortable with it, and it was like, oh, I don't want to hear a story like that. But I'm really comfortable with it because I think the message that I'm giving is valuable to anybody who will listen, and that's where I think if we can all get there, that's the for me. I can see the forest for the trees finally. It's just that homing in on that. That's why I say adversity, overcoming your fear, resiliency, and courage. Maybe that's a little bit too much, but I don't I'm going to stick with it
I
and really.
I take it even further. I think all those are part of like what I've heard it as recently is the encounter with chaos. There's people that look at it in ancient stories, religious stories, and cultural stories, and it's an old thing, right? And the encounter with chaos, how do we handle that? Because something's going to surprise you, even if you've got your, I mean, it's amazing how well our society runs considering the challenges and the amount or the lack of attention we sometimes bring to the situation. Shocking to me that it still runs as well as it does, but however well things run, there's always going to be something that goes sideways, something you don't expect. How do you learn to handle that better? And we talked about earlier, I think you voluntarily face some adversity. And I think there's a real power to that, particularly when you choose to do it. At some point, it's going to be chosen for you. So I think I mean, it's like a physical exertion. At some point, you're probably going to have to physically exert yourself. So if you choose to do some uncomfortable working out before that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
probably going to go easier.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
same thing's
exactly.
true emotionally, only maybe much more so because you have no idea. I mean, like, there's a certain amount of physical stress you can take before it's just over. You're done, right? But emotionally, you might be shocked by how much you can handle and you're still here. Maybe you feel like you were saying earlier, you're like a fragile piece of glass. And if someone touches you, you'd shatter. You may feel that way, but that's I mean, you know, that's the encounter with chaos, dealing with a high degree of emotional chaos. And that's a profound thing. It's something I think we can all help one another with. I think probably virtually everybody's had some of it. And it's like, have you faced it? Have you considered it? Have you thought about what it means? You know, have you shared your story? And are you willing to still face some more? Are you willing to take it a step further? Because as long as you're here, I think that's part of what you got to do. There's always the next challenge. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Wow, we've had a lot of conversation today. At least I'm sure spent a lot of time talking.
I don't know if this is what I was hoping for. I've got I love this when I can get someone who's experienced with speaking about something they're passionate about. And I find that, like, I mean, this one is good because it happens to be something I have an interest in too. I was in the military, and, you know, since then, you know, there's been a certain amount of interest in World War II and Vietnam and combat in general. But to get somebody speaking about something they're passionate about, particularly when, you know, you've got a ton of stories to tell, you know, and that's a very cool thing. So to give you a chance to, like, you know, go in at that, that's really what I wanted today. And thank you very much for your time, Val. You have time for one more question?
Sure.
What got you involved with Toastmasters?
Well, I have been speaking since 1994 about these men, and I didn't really feel like I was effective. So I saw that we have this thing called Third Thursday. It's downtown on Main Street. They close it. And there was a Toastmaster group, and they were talking about Toastmasters, and some of my friends were there. And I just thought, well, I'll just try it and see what happens. And then I found I was successful. I competed at D26 4 or 5 years ago. And everybody didn't think my story was funny because my dad tricked me that I had won $3 million. And then we found out that I hadn't. And he was like 2 weeks from his death. And it was the last dirty trick he pulled on me. And we all just, I mean, we were in hysterics because we really thought, I mean, all us women at the table thought, my God, we're rich. We're all rich. You know, she won $3 million. And then we go in, and my husband and my brothers are like trying to hide themselves so that I don't beat them up, you know, and we could just only go into hysterics. But the crowd didn't think it was that funny. So I didn't win, which is fine. But it gave me the opportunity to learn from some really good speakers. And then with COVID, my club I was working harder than anybody else. And I finally said in April of last year, this year, I said, I'm done. I won't be returning. But I had joined another one out of Cheyenne and professional presenters out of Denver. And, you know, professional presenters, you can present for 55 minutes if you want to. And everybody evaluates you. And it doesn't there's no table topics. There's no rituals. There is a ritual, but it's not as strict. And the fact that there can be 3 speakers at 20 minutes apiece, and everyone evaluates. And there's some really great people that have been in Toastmasters for years and years and years. Marty Dickinson, I don't know if you know Marty. You know Marty Dickinson? Oh, wow. He's just an amazing speaking coach or speech coach. And so I really like the clubs I'm in because my club didn't challenge me. And the reason I can say that is that when I told them this is my last meeting, I had 3 of my members of the members come up to me and say, you taught me how to speak. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have learned how to speak. And so I felt like I was valuable there. And I worked hard. I worked hard probably than most people because that's just who I am. I dig in and I just research. And I mean, I love that whole piece of solving a problem. Yeah, let's go hybrid. I picked out the equipment. We were going to buy it. And then they said, oh, let's not do that anymore. Okay. So I just needed more challenge, and I needed people that were better than I am to teach me. And they weren't there with my club here locally. It was just the same status quo all the time. And I guess I just was ready for more, and I found it. So I'm glad I'm still a member to Toastmasters Club, and I probably will be the rest of my life because there's something about you can choose your words in writing or in speaking that can be really, really powerful. And I don't think we take that as seriously as we need to. Don't you think?
I agree with you. Like, yeah, this is, one of the core things I was thinking of three things I wanted to like oversimplify, and I call them meta practices. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest moments or like periods of time that changed my life was back in my 20s. I learned how to systematically relax, like really get deep down and relax. That was a huge thing. But what's been the big thing since then is writing and speaking, the three meta practices. And what you can do with your words, what you can do with your communication to take it even more broadly, what you're doing with your body language all the time, what you're doing internally with your state, because it impacts all that. I mean, there's the notion of like, oh, do I hide the fear, the anger, the frustration, or whatever it is, or do I just express it as well as I can and try not to put it off onto somebody else? I mean, there is so much to that, and like to pay a little more attention to it, whether it's in Toastmasters or just thinking about your writing and trying, you write and you edit the writing rather than just writing it. You go, now, is this really get to what I'm saying? Can I clarify that a little more? Can I make it simple? I wrote a paragraph. Can I say it? And have you heard of Cobra Kai?
No.
So did you ever watch The Karate Kid back in the 80s?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so they basically like 30 years ago, I guess it's been more than that. It's like 40 years when they started, because this series has been out for like maybe 4 or 5 years now, but it's called Cobra Kai. So the guy he beats in the first Karate Kid movie, he's more or less, but it's both of them. It's Daniel LaRusso. I can't think of the actor. Ralph Macchio. Ralph Macchio is
Yeah.
And this guy who's Johnny Lawrence in the movie or the show, but it's basically their rivalry from the first movie just brought to modern times and a little moral ambiguity at. Now, Daniel LaRusso has been successful. He like owns several, what do you call them, car lots or whatever.
Right.
And like, and Johnny, it's just gone bad for him. And so he ends up like, teaching karate again. That's kind of how he starts to find his way again, but it's sort of the story of that, and there's humor in it, and they're kind of showing it from both angles, not just Daniel's angle. But all that to say, there's a point where Johnny catches up with the girl from the first movie. I can't think of her name, but the love interest of the first movie who he was dating, and then she ended up dating Daniel by the end. And he is writing this big long thing to her, this big long, like, I'm doing this and now I'm a sensei and I'm working with this kid and he's great, and he's giving her all these things, and they're kind of doing a montage while he's putting it together. But then because she's just asked him like, what's going on with you? That was her response on Facebook,
Right.
or whatever. And he's a complete fossil. As part of the fun of it, like, he doesn't get the internet, Facebook, Twitter, he doesn't get any of it, although it's like he's trying to figure it out. But anyway, the point is, he does this big long thing and he's like about to send it. It's like a good paragraph, but a big, long, meaty paragraph about everything that's going on and what's happened, and him also kind of summarizing the last 2 seasons of the show. And then at the end of it, like, he ends up just like looking at it, reading through it, and he's kind of thinking from it, and he just deletes the whole thing out. And he writes, not much, how about you? And just sends that. And it's like, it was kind of like he needed to take those words that he wrote down. He needed to understand it for himself. And once he did, he didn't need to tell anybody else that anymore. And it came back to like, you don't care about all this, or if you do, we haven't talked in however many decades. Why am I telling you all this? I just figured it out for me. Now that last bit, I'm kind of reading into it because you just see him type it in the montage, and then he deletes it and just writes, not much, how about you? But that was to what you were saying about speaking or writing specifically. That's very meaningful to me. It's like what you do with your words impacts other people. It impacts you, and you can just look at this. You can go hardcore with a fine-tooth comb if you want, but just a little bit of attention can go a long way. It's like with exercise. You can go work out and do yoga and train for a marathon and CrossFit and all this stuff, but you could just walk every day. I'm not saying that's where everybody should stop, but if you just do that, the benefits of just that will blow you away if you'll stick with it. And I feel the same is true with writing and speaking on a mental, emotional level. I mean, the amount of I wanted so much when I started speaking to have other people think I was great, and like, I don't even really think I'm great now. That's close to what happened. It's like, I've come to terms with me more. I'm not done yet, but I've come to terms with me to the point that I don't really feel, I like it when people like my speeches. I like it when other people respond well to what I'm saying or how I said it or what have you, but I'm more happy with it than I used to be. And that's incredibly meaningful. And so, yeah, you know, that's my three things I'll throw in the end of your interview: relaxing, speaking, and writing.
That's great. I'm writing a speech right now, and I wrote it driving to Billings last Thursday. I typed it up on Saturday, and this morning I rewrote a good portion of it because it wasn't succinct. And I realized some other things because it's about mentoring. And I realized that I hadn't been trained on dealing with a person's anxiety to help them. And I hadn't learned yet how, if a speaker had something to give to the audience that pulled them in, because you can be a great speaker and sound good, but nobody remembers you. Or you can be a fabulous speaker. That I'm not saying me, but you could be a fabulous speaker and pull them in and take them along the journey with you. And everything changes for you. Right. You want to do that. You don't want to ever give another speech. I mean, I would do a speech where I'm teaching the history through the men's stories. I would do that, but I still have to have a different intro. I still have to use words that say, what do you think? How would this be for you? You know, I mean, just those questions to have them, you know, put your shoes in this man's shoes. What would you have done? I mean, now that just seems simplified, but it seems to me that I don't think that's what we need with every conversation, but certainly when we are trying to impact people, we need to bring them into the process, which they then listen to us because they are part of that, the process of understanding and looking for the change, or looking for what articulates, not articulates isn't the word, but what resonates with them so that they can use it within their own heart, soul, whatever it is.
It's a powerful experience. And I don't know if this is one-to-one with what you're talking about, but a lot of times when I'm speaking, and it's tougher in this situation, like the video. I mean, it's easier for me live, you know, but this is still better than just about anything else. When COVID happened, I was like just wrecked because it felt like my whole speaking thing I was doing had been taken away from me. But I realized, you know, very quickly, or someone helped me realize, that this might not be exactly what I wanted, but it's still a lot better than nothing. So, but my point being, with all that, there's a point where I'm speaking with people and there's just nothing. It's just silence, and and that's a really cool point. There's always been the narcissistic part of me that wants to be the center of attention. But like when that happens, it's much more meaningful than that. It's not about me being great. It's about this thing that we're all sharing together. There's time is one piece of it. It's like we're all getting closer to dead. That's reality. We're all getting closer to dead. This time is valuable for me and for you, but we shared some of it and we did something here with this time, you know, and that's profoundly meaningful to me, that they're willing to share some of their time with me, and I could do something that was meaningful enough to them that everybody shut up. You're not hearing a cough, a sneeze, anything. It's just rapt attention. And that's such an amazing experience. And like, the only thing is I want to make sure I keep earning that. I want to keep showing up with something that earns that moment, the power of that situation. And I don't know, it's a profound thing to communicate something to people that, you know, that they find valuable. You know, and you know, I'm glad I get to do that at least some of the time.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's just it's a wonderful goal. And, you know, I don't think when people start, and I think that's the problem with mentoring. You think, oh, I've got to teach them how to write a speech. I've got to teach them how to, you know, and some of them are great speakers, but I've had a mentee that was a great speaker, but she didn't pull the audience in like she could have. And that's the part you're talking about, pulling them in to where, and that wasn't really anybody's focus. You know, many of them were doing it for their job, and yay, good for them. I have no problem with that. It's just, I wanted more, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful I made the change. It's just been, it's just incredible. Yeah. Well, what else do we have to say? We solved all the worldld's problems. We figured out World War II.
It's been a productive hour and change. I think we can pat ourselves on the back at this point.
Sure, for sure. So anyway, that's me in what is it? Well, an hour and 16 or 17 minutes, I guess you've had.
If someone wants to find out more about what you do, where's the best place for them to start?
I think I'm very bad at that. I don't think my website is warsvoices.org, but really it's about the Radio Tokyo letters that I have. And I have not really, LinkedIn is probably the best, you know, and it's just Val Burgess. Yeah. And warsvoices.org or vburgess at warsvoices.org is, you know, how you can talk to me, you know, with messaging. And well, I've got a phone too, but I don't really want to do my phone. I really kind of,
that's fine. That's fine.
too much. It's too much. But certainly I respond to email and LinkedIn and my website. Marty, my speaking coach, said, we'll get to that. Just get you some gigs. And so I'm working on, I was talking to him last Friday or a week or 2 weeks ago, because we meet every Friday. What have you done? And that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I really want to speak at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. And one of the men I interviewed, I have about 16 hours of him. He was with the Dutch resistance for 3 months before he was captured by the Gestapo. And I want to speak at the Museum of Flight because I was with him, my husband and I with him and another POW, and he knew every aircraft and everything about every one of those aircraft. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have a recorder. I was just like, argh. So I want to do that. But I mentioned Boeing and how the B-17F was really used a lot in 1943 and how most of them came from Boeing. And Marty says, you need to talk to their employees. You need to tell them how valuable they were during World War II. You need to give them that message. And so, and then when my friend showed up from Washington State last Tuesday, I guess, and he was telling me how the Museum of Flight opened up the hangar where they had the B-17F because he was in it, and his friends from Holland who had taken care of, they were actually the children of his, the people who took care of him during the war and kept him away from harm's way, had come to the US, and they opened it up and they let the Dutch get inside of the plane and sit in the, you know, the pilot's nose. I mean, just everywhere. And so I now have another link to them to say, Jim Keefe was a man that I highly respected and I interviewed, and I know that you did him favors by allowing the Dutch visitors to, you know, so I'm trying to get into that point. And so I've been more working on that piece rather than the promo piece, which has its advantages and disadvantages. Like this is
absolutely.
You know?
But that's I mean, yeah, that's always a challenge, right? You know, you've got the message, you know, like how much, you know, is it just stick with the message? How much of it is making sure as many people as possible get the message to them, you know? So it's a challenge. That's something I'm trying to figure out too. I wish I had good advice to give you on that.
Well, I did marketing for my life's work for 30 years, you know, so I know how to do it. I know how much time I need to spend, but frankly, I like speaking and finding the gigs because it isn't a simple thing to just get a speaking engagement. It is, you know, it takes time. You got to nurture those people, but you want to have an interpersonal relationship with them. It's not like, yeah, I want to come and speak. It's like, I really want to help them do the marketing. I want to really up the game so that when they get me to come and speak, I'm speaking about what they want me to speak to the audience that's going to really resonate with it, you know, or have that resonate with them. There's just pieces. And if I can save money and go to 3 museums in Georgia, why not do that? You know, and save so they could share costs. So it just is another piece that I'm putting more attention to because it's a good time now to be getting speaking, you know, events.
It seems like there's a lot of hunger for live events. My Toastmasters group is out of it's a corporate club for Progressive Insurance. And Progressive had an open house recently at the campus here in Colorado Springs. And I was expecting there'd be some people for new hires specifically, but like, you know, there was like several booths set up. So our group set up one for Toastmasters peak articulators there. And I was blown away at how many people showed up. I mean, it was like a crowd. And like, I figured it was supposed to start at 10 o'clock, which was my shift normally starts. I got there 10 minutes early. It was already packed at 10 till 10. And so I went down there, found our booth, and, you know, pretty much talked to people the whole day until well after lunch. And my point in telling you this is that, I mean, it seems like there's a real hunger for this right now after the 2 years of or however long it was of lockdowns.
But I think it's
actually be around
No, I
people.
actually think it's even more than that. I think we need to learn to talk to one another because I think something, well, it was COVID. It damaged that. We have not, I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. You know,
Right.
that sort of, and we don't have that softness, which we can just talk and converse and share ideas. Somehow that got lost in the mix. And
Yeah. Well, you
I
can
think I
cut people off for a little while, but you can't do it forever. I mean, you know,
right.
it's you'll feel it more and more. And so yeah, that's but I mean the good thing about that is like I think that opportunity is big right now. So that's something I'm hoping to figure out to get some more opportunities as well. So
I thank you for listening to my stories today. It's always such a great, it's like, oh, I get to talk about them. I got to talk about these guys. Jack, did you hear that? I talked about you and your poop. And you know, I mean, it just makes my day to be able to talk about them. So
I love hearing people talk about what they love. So it was a
for
good
sure.
time, Val. Thank you so much.
You bet. You take care. Talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Take it easy.